The scene is the Brisbane River, Australia. Queenslanders will recognise the skyline of the city of Brisbane and the familiar Story Bridge. The time has come to tow Santa Fe's newly constructed drilling vessel, the Southern Cross, downriver to Moreton Bay for towing speed trials, deep ballasting, anchoring and the inclining experiment. Australian Offshore Services, a division of P&O Australia Limited, have designed the Lady Anne as the first of a new class of deep water rig service vessels. This 6,400 brake horsepower, 57-metre long vessel, equipped with the latest and finest equipment available, has arrived for its first job, towing the Southern Cross down the narrow and twisting Brisbane River. The huge yellow marker buoys being loaded aboard from the Lady Anne will be used to mark the exact position of 8 15-ton anchors when the Southern Cross is finally positioned out in the bay. The Southern Cross is a twin-hulled, column-stabilized, semi-submersible designed by Santa Fe Engineering Services in cooperation with the Ocean Engineering Section of Lloyd's Register of Shipping. The unique design of the Southern Cross combines Santa Fe's broad experience in offshore drilling with the latest design techniques to achieve structural compactness and operational efficiency. The harbour master's plan is to use 4 small harbour tugs to turn the Southern Cross 180 degrees in the river before attaching Lady Anne to the lead tow bridle, since the river is too narrow to permit a safe turn later. The Lady Anne is moved into position to receive the rig's tow bridle. The tow bridle is being lowered by an air hoist onto the deck of the Lady Anne. The entire connection will be made mechanically while underway in a 3-knot current. The Lady Anne's 4 Daihatsu diesels supply 6,400 horsepower to 2 shafts. Top speed is 15 knots and bollard pull is 80 tons. She has a heavy-duty Beck & Jonas triple-drum waterfall winch with a Caterpillar independent drive. Maximum line pull is 122,000 kilograms and top line speed is 61 meters per minute. It is the harbour master's first experience with towing a large twin-hulled structure like the Southern Cross, but he knows the river to be narrow, crooked and shallow. He has specified that 6 meters is the maximum permissible draft and intends to reach the mouth of the river at high tide slack water. A delay of 1 hour in getting away has disrupted the schedule, but the Lady Anne and the Southern Cross prove well matched. The Lady Anne is towing the rig at a very satisfying high speed. The Southern Cross is trailing beautifully without yaw. These shots show the Lady Anne shortening and lengthening its tow line without halting the tow. News of the tow has been on television the last few days and a crowd has turned out to watch. But despite the harbour master's concern, Lady Anne and the Southern Cross reached the open sea without incident and at a speed that enabled the lost hour to be recovered. The towing speed of the Southern Cross is determined by towing across a measured course in 2 directions. Speeds of 8 knots were recorded and using only 5,000 horsepower, speeds averaged 7 knots. Based on this data, it was proven that a single towing vessel of 5,000 horsepower will be sufficient to tow the rig on future moves. Although its principal dimensions are modest in comparison with many semi-submersibles, one recognizes at a glance that this is a gigantic structure. Its 2 hulls are 79.2 meters long, 17.5 meters wide, and 9.6 meters deep. The 4 corner columns are 26.3 meters high, 10.5 meters wide, and 13 meters long. Rectangular with corners rounded on a 2-meter radii. With the mast down, it towers 60.5 meters above the water surface, and when raised, it will tower 114 meters high. At the end of the speed course, the turning characteristics of the Southern Cross were checked and found to be excellent.
Radio switching box is in.
Authorities require that every newly constructed drilling rig must have an inclining experiment to determine its actual centre of gravity and demonstrate its stability. If the actual centre of gravity is different from the predicted value, measures must be taken to correct it, or the deck load of the vessel must be reduced to compensate. The experiment consists of moving measured weights from one side of the vessel to the other a number of times, measuring the angle of heel each time the weights are shifted. The inclining is done with the Southern Cross ballasted down to 16.5 meters of draft so that the water level is up on the columns. In this position, smaller weights are needed to heel the vessel for the inclining test. The centre of gravity of the rig was determined to be within 0.02 of a metre of the predicted value, which in turn means that the design deck load of 2,000 tons can actually be carried. The Lady Anne is fitted with a special high-capacity Swedish Svenska fire foam monitor fitted on deck forward of the bridge. Maximum working pressure of the water is 20 kilograms per square centimetre, with a maximum water quantity of 9,000 litres per minute. This operates at a range of 100 metres and complies in all respects to the firefighting and life-saving requirements of SOLAS, the Australian government and Lloyd's. The Lady Anne is only one of a fleet of lady vessels servicing the Australian offshore industry. In waters to the north of the continent and on the northwest shelf and Exmouth Plateau, Australian Offshore Services is busily engaged servicing the new generation of exploration rigs in a vital race against time, searching for Australia's future energy supplies. This is one such exploration rig, the Regional Endeavour, which has just completed an exploration well for Woodside Petroleum on the northwest shelf and is in the process of plugging the well before moving to another nearby location. On this location, the Regional Endeavour has been drilling in 160 metres of water and is held in position by a radial mooring system of 8 anchors. Each anchor weighs 15 tons and is connected to the rig by means of 1,000 metres of 64mm chain. The two lady vessels seen here are preparing to unseat these anchors and return them on board the rig prior to the move. Before the rig can move off location, 8 backup anchors must be removed from the main mooring system and returned to the rig. Here we have a model of the after working deck of the Lady Anne, with all the gear laid out preparing to recover anchors for the oil rig. Here we see the buoy catcher, pelican hook and the tugger wires all set out in readiness. The seamen place the buoy catcher on the crucifix on top of the anchor buoy, and the anchor buoy is then hove on deck until the buoy pigtail wire is clear of the pelican hook. The pelican hook is then placed on the anchor wire, the buoy disconnected and pulled clear. The work wire is then made fast to the anchor pennant wire, the pelican hook disconnected and the anchor hove up onto the deck over the stern roller. The 100-ton winch on board Lady Cynthia makes this an easy task. Each marker buoy is over 2 meters in height and weighs over 3 tons. It is connected to each anchor by means of a 58mm diameter wire. Once the buoy pennant wire is inboard and secured in the pelican hook, the buoy is disconnected, the winch work wire attached to the anchor pennant wire, and then the anchor is winched up over the stern roller. The anchor in turn is removed from the system, the marker buoy reconnected to the main anchor and reset, marking its recovery position. From the safety point of view, the vessel then proceeds alongside the rig and all spare wires and backup anchors are passed by crane to the rig. This enables the working deck area to be kept clear and avoids congestion. The 15-ton anchors are large by any standards. Depending upon the location of the drilling site, the water depth may be in the region of 400 metres or maybe as little as 45 metres, with the anchor pennant wires to the marker buoy altered to suit the depth conditions. When not involved in rig shaft anchor work, the large open after deck can carry up to 500 tonnes of cargo and drilling equipment. Here we see the main anchor chain being winched inboard by the Regional Endeavour. The Lady Cynthia has the main anchor up under the roller, clear of the bottom, to enable this winching to take place. Hauling in this chain is a long and laborious process. It can take approximately 2 hours for each one. Time means money in the offshore industry, and darkness does not prevent the work from progressing in preparing the rig to move off location. Whilst that activity on the northwest is continuing, another member of the Lady Fleet is hard at work down in Bass Strait. On the deck of the Lady Vera is a mooring buoy together with its anchor, chain and concrete mooring block being taken out to location at the mackerel platform. Here the work is more varied since there are 7 production platforms in operation and more being developed. Lady Vera services them all. The rapid changes in weather conditions down here on the fringe of the roaring 40s often cause unforeseen delays.
Tuna platform, this is Lady Vera, Lady Vera. Tuna, Lady Vera. We anchored at Stockyard Hill at 1100 hours, waiting on weather, and all being equal, we'll be proceeding to mackerel first thing in the morning.
Whatever the weather, the crew must prepare the buoy mooring system for rapid release once the master has manoeuvred the Lady Vera onto the exact location for the site of the anchor. In the workshop, the engineers are preparing a special release mechanism for the pelican hooks to enable this to be done. These large mooring buoys are utilised by the service vessels to attach their headlines when securing to the platforms, and are also a convenient home for families of seals.
All right, let her go.
The mooring line to the buoy is now attached on the stern bollard, and the master manoeuvres the vessel directly towards the platform to stretch out the chain and bed the anchor into the seabed. Wildlife abounds in Bass Strait, and the presence of the platforms and buoys have created marine ecologies which support these colonies of seals. In another port of Bass Strait, the Lady Gay, another of the sisters, is approaching the terminal on routine passage as part of her charter with an offshore construction company. In the background, we see the underwater jacket, which forms the base of one of the offshore platforms under construction. The partly submerged yellow structure under tow is the pipeline stinger, which is used by the construction barge to cradle the pipeline from the barge onto the seabed. Lady Gay, which has been engaged in construction work in Bass Strait, is assisting the derrick barge 21 to demobilise for a temporary layup before starting the next big construction phase. The huge derrick barge 21 is now at anchor in Corner Inlet and is in the process of taking on board all her stores prior to her temporary demobilisation. An annoying happening in offshore work is the frequent fouling of propellers with floating lines. With assistance, this is soon cleared. One final trip from the derrick barge 21, which has been her constant companion for the last 18 months, with some of the workforce who are glad to go on a well-earned leave. Meanwhile, back to Lady Vera. After completing her buoy-laying operation, she is busily engaged in going the rounds of the various platforms performing her normal duties. Securing the bow to the mooring buoy, she is in the process of tying up to the platform to enable backloading to take place. Whilst this backloading of equipment from the platform is happening, opportunity is taken to pass down the large hoses to allow diesel and fresh water to be pumped to the platform.
Just take the plug off so that he can flush it through first.
Much of the backloading that we see here will be used again and again in other work locations as more platforms are built. And so the work goes on round the clock, day in, day out, in all weathers, which mercifully at this time is calm and makes for easy working conditions in the unpredictable Bass Strait. These islands of steel in Bass Strait are vital to the economy of Australia, and they're supported by the highly skilled personnel of Australian offshore services going about their routine jobs, assisting the flow of vital oil and gas to the Victorian mainland. The backloading completed, Lady Vera heads for Barry Beach Marine Terminal and a well-earned rest for the crew before setting out once again. The crew facilities on board all the Lady vessels are to the very highest standards laid down by the Australian government in conjunction with standards agreed to by owners and unions. The seaman's accommodation, which we see here, is a typical example of the degree of comfort which is provided for the 9-man crew, who often spend weeks at sea as part of their normal duties. Another day, another place, and Lady Vera is seen discharging the backloading which she took from the halibut platform. Soon, she will be offloaded and prepared for another busy round in Bass Strait. And so the work of Australian offshore services and their experienced sea staff manning the fleet go about their daily tasks, servicing the vital offshore industry and the needs of the nation. Wherever offshore activity is taking place around this vast continent, sooner or later, a lady appears over the horizon to provide the vital support tasks necessary to maintain and foster this new and growing dynamic industry.